Let's go. We now know who the Philadelphia Eagles will be facing off in the NFL divisional round. So let's get the party started. We got a lot to discuss on today's Daily Ticket. Sean Brace, Sean Barnard, SB's coming your way. Sean Barnard, how are we doing today, sir?
Doing well, Sean Brace. We got a nice weekend of wild card football there. The Eagles cruising on, got the Rams. A pretty low-key weekend, I would say. Pretty much as expected for the most part, I would say. So pretty content with the weekend of football. I'll say that.
I agree. Look, yesterday, full disclosure, did have the Vikings, so I will take that one as a loss. But other than that, the rest of the weekend played out essentially how we thought it was going to be. The other 5 games spread, besides the Denver Broncos. So those are my 2 losses this weekend. Last night, the Vikings and the Denver Broncos fired on the Eagles. Was all over the Ravens. Had the Houston Texans advancing in there, although that's showing off a little bit because when it came down to putting money on the line, was a little reluctant to do so. But in the bracket, had Houston advancing in that. So
Me as
look,
well.
good. Yeah, exactly. Ultimately, we know we're getting into at this point in time because these 2 teams had faced off not too long ago, and Saquon Barkley ran all over the Rams, all over them. And I see a lot of people really just pushing that to the side, saying that was in the regular season. And I don't understand how you could have that reaction to what took place. Again, I think those are going to be 2 different games at the end of the day. But where I stand right here, right now, the Eagles' bread and butter prevailed in that game. Good
Yeah.
defense. And, oh, by the way, running Saquon Barkley down your throat. Here we are. I just fully expect a little bit more, even though I understand the Rams defensive line is good. But stop me if I'm wrong on this one. The offensive line for the Philadelphia Eagles is pretty good as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And to be honest, I thought the story of the Vikings-Rams game was much more about what happened with the Vikings there. And Sam Darnold specifically, seeing ghosts once again in his career. It's been an incredible year for Sam Darnold, but I don't know if we've seen a guy reach the heights that he did in the regular season and see basically all the opportunities he had created for himself kind of disappear in such a big moment there. So I felt bad for Sam Darnold to an extent. From a Vikings perspective, I think you have to look at this of at least we found this out before we paid the man and made him the guy moving forward. They're going to have some tough conversations. But to me, I thought last night was much more about the Vikings not looking ready for the moment than the Rams particularly being fired up. They took advantage of every opportunity that Darnold provided for them, so credit to them. But I do think it will be a different story next weekend.
Yeah, 9 sacks by the LA Rams. That's where
Yeah.
it starts and ends. And Darnold can only do so much in that spot. So that's where I'm at from last night's game between those 2 teams. The perspective is, look, if I get it, Sam Darnold's in the crosshairs at this point in time, as he should be. People were saying he turned into a pumpkin. He did throw a couple bad passes, interception, but he was under pressure all night long. So I would look at what the Rams did defensively more than anything from last night. And, oh, by the way, like I said, with the turnovers, they were ball hawks out there, punching the ball out, strip sacks. It was pretty intense from that perspective. They were after it. So I got to tip my cap to the LA Rams defense across the board. And you know what? Yeah, that will travel.
Yeah.
I just don't look at the LA Rams offense in the same light that a lot of other people are doing. That's all.
Yeah, I would agree with you there. And I mean, Sean McVay is a mastermind. So there's going to be a game plan in place. It's not going to be a cakewalk for this Philadelphia Eagles team, but I do think there is some big boy football that will be played that the Vikings were unable to, I guess, produce within themselves or find a way to impose themselves in that specific game. That is the story of this Eagles team. Is they're going to bully you in the trenches. They're going to be the first guy to hit you there. And the Vikings were not up for that challenge. I do think a different story. So I wasn't afraid of either of these teams from an Eagles perspective watching last night and even leading up to it. I think they're in a perfect spot. And for the Eagles specifically, it's all about what they do internally. So I'm not worried pretty much regardless here. I'm pretty comfortable that it is the Rams matchup. I do think Saquon Barkley is in for a big day once again. And it's going to be fun football this weekend.
Yes. So look, where we're at right now, as far as DraftKings Sportsbook, the line opened up, got as high as 6.5 last night, immediately down to 6. I think the more key number from this game, Sean Barnard, and who represents DraftKings very well, DKNation.com, DK Network. Come on, Brace. You would think I would get it right eventually. DKNetwork.com. The total got as high as 45.5, now down to 43.5, Sean Barnard.
Wow.
That caught my attention. So a lot of people are expecting defense to be front and center on Sunday at 3 p.m. I kind of agree. But at the end of the day, man, again, Saquon Barkley ran all over this team. I just feel like that's going to be essentially what's going to be the deciding factor for the Birds on Sunday.
Yeah, I think absolutely that, like, for all the concerns with Jalen Hurts that I've seen floated out there and all that kind of thing, to me, like, when you to bring up the defensive side of the conversation, 9 sacks is 9 sacks, but I think a lot of those were self-imposed by Sam Darnold for him holding on to the football too long, for him getting antsy in the pocket. The feet did not look right for basically the entirety of that game. I don't think that's going to be Jalen Hurts. You can say what you want about Jalen. He's not going to be a guy that turns into a pumpkin and the moment looks too large for him. You can question the arm strength. You can nitpick some decision making, that side of things, but he's not going to ever be a guy that is blinks at the moment in front of him. That won't be the case this weekend. I also think the Rams are just going to straight up struggle to develop that type of pass rush against this Eagles offensive line, which has been basically the gold standard of the NFL for years now. And it's a massive credit to this team that you have Hall of Famers retiring and you just plug in and don't miss a beat. Cam Jurgens stepping up without Jason Kelsey, all these kind of conversations that the next generation has been passed through. But the bottom line is they keep producing. I expect that to be the case. And Saquon had plenty of success against the same Rams team. Let's also not forget that Devontae Smith was not even a part of that game. So that is something that they have not seen either.
Very true. Very true. A whole different ball game when it comes to these two teams matching up versus last time in some sort of fashion. But at the end, these are good teams. Don't get me wrong. Like the Rams are good. I got to give it up to the Houston Texans winning. They won their division. It's a good team this year. 10+ wins regular season. But if you're playing in a divisional round, yeah, you're there for a reason. I don't have to go into the Chiefs, the Ravens, the Bills, of course, the Eagles, or the Lions. But the Commanders, the Texans, like we got to chalk these guys up. And the Rams is good football teams putting it together. And that was the big thing. The big pushback for me on the Rams all season long, Sean Barnard, was that, look, if this team can play to its potential, sure, but they were anything but, and they snuck in the side door to make the playoffs. So like, it's not a shock that they're able to put it together, but it is surprising that it's all coming together right here, right now, as we saw it unfold last night.
Yeah, and in fairness to them, like they have battled injuries, both Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua battling things throughout the season, missed some time, each one of them there. That's like such a key part of their offense. And even as great as Kyron Williams is, who I essentially would probably call like the foundation of their offense at this point, there's a much more run-oriented approach than I think we're accustomed to for a Sean McVay and Matt Stafford-led offense. And Kyron's been terrific this year, so shout out to him. But I do think it's a completely different story when you do have those two pass catchers, which has not been the case for not majority, but a couple games this season. They started the year 1-4. They've certainly picked up momentum as the season has progressed. I do think momentum means something when heading into the playoffs, but I do think that they are going to have to increase their bar of expectation in the way that they played compared to what I saw last night facing this Eagles team. So while this Rams team is not a pushover, I don't think this is something that Philadelphia should be afraid to go into battle whatsoever.
All right, we'll come back to that. We'll look a little bit more in detail as far as that game is concerned. I do want to, believe it or not, hit on the 76ers, who have a game tonight against the Oklahoma City Thunder. So we will talk a little bit about that, a little bit of NBA as well, mix it all in with Sean here on the Daily Ticket. But let's go ahead and hit the divisional round numbers as we sit. Saturday at 4:30 p.m., Kansas City Chiefs 8.5-point favorites. 42.5 is our total here. 7.5 was the number yesterday, so we got a full point swing in favor of the Kansas City Chiefs. And at what point do you say that's too many points? At what point do we say the Texans can make this a good football game? They did match up recently. They ended up losing by 8 points. It was on the road in Arrowhead. Understood, but I just don't know if the Chiefs, we can bank on them covering these numbers because they haven't been able to do all season long. They did in that one. But again, the Texans got healthy. They ended up getting 2 linebackers back against the Chargers. I thought that showed as far as throughout the course of the game plan, the way that they played defense in that second half specifically. You talk about CJ Stroud. If you get the best of CJ Stroud, again, it's a big if. Is he able to go into Arrowhead and sling it like the CJ Stroud we saw from last year? How many points are too many points in your mind, Sean?
It's certainly not 8.5. That I'm comfortable with laying the number far more than that in my thoughts there. And as much as like the Chiefs have struggled to keep their foot on the gas and really punish teams, blow them out this season, they've very much been a team that has squeaked by from a week-to-week basis. They're still the 2-time defending champions. They still have Patrick Mahomes, and I would still say they have not played their best football yet this year. So I'm still expecting for that to be the case for this one. As far as the Texans overall, Yes, they deserve credit for winning that game. To me, that story of that game is not about the Texans whatsoever. And frankly, I was not overly excited with the version of football they put on the field. Yes, the defense was great, but that was about Justin Herbert turning into a pumpkin as well. And that was the story of that game to me. So I think that game was more or less handed to them by a quarterback that is willing to do those things. And I think the Texans made the most of that opportunity there. So shout out to the Texans for getting the job done. But I do think that they're going to have a bit of a wake-up call against the two-time defending champs, and the Chiefs have a pretty easy time cruising through this one.
So fair, so true, and right there with you. Justin Herbert came up so small in that spot. And, look, like I was making the case yesterday, and I know you are definitely a little bit more down on him than I am. Let's put it that way. But, like he's had 5 seasons. He's come up small in the 2 playoff spots. He also had another one that was playing for something significant at the end of the season, came up small in that one. And now Jim Harbaugh's there. So there's no more excuses. But I do want to be fair and say offensively, get him a couple more weapons and let's see what he can do. Let's see if that helps him out. Ladd McConkey's good. Who else? Quentin Johnson drops every ball possible thrown his way.
Sure, but he's had Keenan Allen and Mike Williams for years, and I think saying just coming up small is a little bit of an understatement for what we saw for Justin Herbert this weekend. Justin Herbert is exactly who he's always been. He's a social media quarterback who puts up empty calorie statistics and has 0% of winning DNA in his body there. Let's talk about the playoff shortcomings that he had this game, in which he threw not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 interceptions in this matchup against the Texans here, which, by the way, while they played well, are not regarded as this top tier defense. These were mistakes by Justin Herbert. I get you can kind of talk yourself out of 2 of them, but through a receiver's hands, whatever the conversation or coping mechanism you want to have there. But let's also not forget the other playoff performance that we've seen from Justin Herbert, in which he jumped out to a 27-point lead, the 3rd largest blown lead in NFL history, and just allowed a bad Jacksonville Jaguars team to dog walk them in the second half here. That's who Justin Herbert is at this point. And you're right. We're 5 seasons in. He's going to be 27 when he takes the field next year. This is not some up-and-coming rising star that is improving. He is who he is at this point. And what that is a quarterback that is not good enough to take you anywhere in the postseason.
Hard pill to swallow, but it's the truth. It's where it is right now with that discussion. And he came up small in a huge spot where they were favored to go on the road and win that game. And next thing you know, all of a sudden turn the football over when you cannot do that. My only pushback is he didn't do that all season long, right? He had an unbelievable year as far as touchdown to interception ratio and yards all over the place in Harbaugh's first season. So maybe he was just trying to do a little bit more, be aggressive. I don't know, but that can't happen. If you turn the football over, that's how you're going to lose a game. And in the playoffs, it's as simple as that. You're one and done. So again, on to the next one for the Houston Texans. I tend to lean with you, but I do hope that the Texans are able to make it a game, right? Like, aren't we all in agreement? Anybody but the Kansas City Chiefs this year?
Yeah, sure. I will be hopeful that the Texans can kind of replicate that performance, and maybe there is more to their defense than I'm giving them credit. That they're also a team that has had battled injuries on that side of the ball, guys in and out, suspensions on that side of the ball as well. So we haven't seen the complete puzzle for what that defense is supposed to look like. I did think they did some interesting things as far as their coverage and the way that they were able to shut down that Chargers team, but Justin Herbert is certainly not Patrick Mahomes. And I don't think that they're going to have the luxury of, those walk-away interceptions in which the quarterback makes a mistake there. Mahomes is not going to allow those opportunities. So I do unfortunately think the Chiefs are going to be in the driver's seat from start to finish in this one. Would love to be wrong and for the Texans to provide them a scare or maybe even an upset here, but don't feel particularly optimistic about that being the case.
All right, let's go on to the next one. We got the Commanders and the Detroit Lions, another monster number here, 9.5. Can't wait to break the trends out for this week as far as the divisional rounds with some of these big spreads. 9.5, Commanders catching 55.5 is our total. This is at 8 p.m. on Saturday night. Going to be a great ball game here, I hope. But the odds makers are saying anything but that. Is this a case where the rookie quarterback is going to go on the road into that scene, in that arena, in that dome, and struggle in your mind? Because Jaden Daniels has been incredible this season.
Yeah, Jaden Daniels not a guy I expect to blink at the moment. That he's proved that no moment has looked too big for him so far. The composure that he carries himself with. I mean, last week, a clear-cut example of him being able to drive that team down, set them up for that game-winning field goal with everything on the line there. That's really impressive stuff from a rookie, from a guy who was not even looked at as one of the more NFL-ready quarterbacks. And that was one of the critiques early on in the season, that this was a quote-unquote college offense that they're running. And that's obviously not being the case based on the production that is being seen there. this Detroit team is a monster, and I do think that they're going to put up amount of points in which Washington is incapable of matching. I do kind of like, shout out to Mark Henry Jr., his approach to this, that he's saying the team total for Washington 22.5. I don't see a world in which they keep this a game without scoring more than that. So if you do believe the Commanders to keep this competitive and be in the mix, I think that is probably the direction to play it. And the team total over 22.5 there, they're going to have to put up 23 plus points to be within striking distance of this Lions team. That offense truly does look unstoppable and seems to be keep getting stronger as the season has progressed there. So I think we should buckle up for a high scoring matchup if Washington's to have a shot here. I don't see anywhere on which that Lions offense is really even toned down or remotely stopped.
Yeah, that's where I'm at. I just have I'm struggling to put the Commanders defense in the spots that they need to slow down this Detroit Lions offense. And I
Yeah.
think that we're going to see a ton of points. And oh, by the way, that's why it's the biggest total on the board of 55.5. You go down that defensive line, you go through the linebackers for the Commanders. Now they did play okay against the Tampa Bay Bucks. I'll tip my cap in a tough spot there, but the Lions aren't the Bucks. The Bucks aren't the Lions. So
No.
I think that the Lions are going to have a field day offensively. It's going to take a crazy effort from Jaden Daniels to keep this a ball game, but 9.5 is a big time number, and that's the ultimate equalizer right there. Where are you leaning right now for as far as that number is concerned?
Probably the -9, but I don't love it, to be honest. The 9's a lot of points for any playoff game, and I do have some respect for this Commanders team. I think they're a little bit better than they've been given credit. I mean, 12-5 in the regular season, and as much as the Buccaneers weren't looked at as title threats or anything like that, they're a good football team, and that's a really good result that this Commanders team produced. So I think this is probably where we start to see a little bit of the experience of this Lions team show, and that they are able to extend this to a lead, a double-digit lead, and cover the 9. But I will say, like, I do have respect for everything Jaden Daniels has done this year, and it wouldn't ultimately shock me if he's able to keep this one striking distance. 9 points does feel like a lot, so there's a chance I talk myself into this by the end of the week, but I do think the Lions are that good and will prove that in this matchup.
Interesting. All right. Let's keep it moving, Sean. On to the next one. We get to Sunday. We already hit on the Rams and the Eagles, so let's get to the game of the weekend for everybody else but us here in Philadelphia. It's the Bills and the Ravens. Ravens are a 1.5 road favorite, 51.5. These two teams matched up earlier this season. Again, that was a lifetime ago. It feels like Buffalo played a bad football game on the road. Lamar didn't really impress me all that much in that game either, but Derrick Henry was the story, stop and end. Had a tremendous day for the Ravens, and he's been such a difference maker for that Ravens offense, helping out Lamar, making life easier for the play caller, Todd Monken and company. Of course, receivers are able to get open. Zay Flowers wasn't too much of an issue missing him against the Steelers, but in this one, where I think they're going to have to throw up some points, and I do expect them to do so, Buffalo's for real, and especially at home. I think they're averaging like 30-plus points at home, number one in the league as far as points per game at home. So the Ravens are going to have to go in there and be aggressive. I fully do expect that they will. I won't lie to you. This is a coin flip game. I'm trying to talk myself into one side or the other. I'm leaning more towards the Ravens here, but Buffalo, number one team at home this year, hard time to pick against them.
Yeah, totally agree with you here. And I think both these teams are clear-cut top 5 teams in football. So it is going to be a little frustrating for each of them that this is how the bracket shook out. But every team is good at this point in the playoffs, and you got to take that on. I lean towards Baltimore in this game, that I do think Derrick Henry is the difference maker that this Ravens offense needed. Just having him as that constant piece that will wear you down, be physical, run through you, I think is such a great contrast to have for a guy like Lamar Jackson, who obviously is much more make a guy miss and has some shake and bake and can just beat you with his legs there. To have a guy that is ready to just run you over, to contrast that with, I think we're seeing the success and the way that the ceiling of this team has overall been raised. And I also think there's something to this defensive adjustment that has been made by this Ravens team in the second half of the season. And really all it is there is Kyle Hamilton being shifted from more of an edge rusher type role or outside linebacker type role to playing more of a traditional safety. You can make a case he's the best safety in the league, and that's probably the spot you should keep him at. So dropping him back into that secondary unit has certainly improved their pass defense. Josh Allen is excellent, and he will have his flashes, and there's no doubt about it. It is cool to see this MVP showdown, as both Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson have rightfully seen plenty of buzz for that award, and one of them will certainly be crowned with it. I think it is time for the Ravens to get over the hump and kind of chase that playoff demon. I think it happens by them taking down the Bills and being ready for a clean shot at the Chiefs, but definitely somewhat of a coin flip game, so it would not entirely shock me if it went the other way.
Yeah, this is going to be an unbelievable ball game to catch, and ultimately, I'm looking at this one going, man, Lamar and Josh Allen are probably like you said, hey, this is the moment to rise up and not shy away and not turn the football over. And I do expect those guys to just battle. I think this is going to be one of those games that we're going to be talking about all off season long. And am I allowed to say the winner of this puts themselves in a nice spot to possibly beat the Kansas City Chiefs, or I can't get ahead of myself because the Chiefs are playing the Texans, and of course it's the Ravens and Bills.
Yeah, it's tough to ever say you're in a nice spot when you're signing up to go to Arrowhead and play the Chiefs here. But in reality, like, you're going to have to take down the king if you want a chance to the throne. And both these teams should be itching at that. And I think they are. So I think that is the mindset from here. You certainly get quite the momentum boost and quite the confidence boost if you are able to take this game and get the victory here. We'll get to next week when we get there. We're going to have to see what happens with this matchup here. I do have kind of a sneaky feeling that this might be Baltimore's year to break through and get over that, I wouldn't say Super Bowl hump, but at least win the AFC and have a chance at the crown there. So I'm optimistic about Baltimore more than I've been really throughout the Lamar Jackson era. I think this is the best team that he's ever had behind him, and he's living up to it. He's played his best football this year, even better than either of the MVP seasons. So very impressed with what we've seen by Lamar. I'm not ready to fully talk myself on them being ready to knock off the Chiefs at this very instant, but I do think that they should have success against this Bills team. And again, it is just going to be an awesome game of football.
Damn right. We got the divisional round. It's here. Best weekend in the NFL season. Even better when the Eagles are involved. We'll talk about those games all week long. We're going to be breaking them down every which way right here on the Daily Ticket, on the Gambler Gang. Be sure to follow us on all things socials at Fox PHL Gambler, at Fox PHL Gambler. And of course, you can catch Sean on socials at Sean_Barnard1. All right. Let's talk about some of the teams that aren't in action right now. And of course, we're talking about possible head coaching opportunities for some candidates out there that are intriguing, some that are laughable, some that are just recycling bin. Go in, pull another name out of the hat. But Deion Sanders, come on down. I can't believe that he's actually getting a phone call at this point in time. But then again, it is Dallas. Jerry Jones did pick up the phone and called Deion. They had a conversation yesterday. Deion was very forthright with the details to Adam Schefter. And he said that essentially when they hung up the phone, he goes, I don't know what's next. He just wanted to talk. And when Jerry Jones calls, you pick up. I agree with that. I'm fine with that.
And especially that there is the relationship there, that Deion Sanders obviously played for the Cowboys, that Jerry Jones was the guy signing his checks back in the day, and Deion obviously playing at an all-world level during that era of football there. So there is the backstory here, the relationship, and I do think that sometimes those phone calls are a little bit more, I guess maybe a little bit less is the better way to put them, than a full-on job interview or a job offer there. I'm sure there's conversations. I don't know. I'm sure Deion isn't even fully sure inside his own head, but I don't know what the next best step is for him at this point. He's obviously done some incredible things down in Colorado. I think people still undersell how impressive that turnaround is, that a case be made that truly one of the worst football programs in the entire country down in Boulder before he got there, and really turning things around in the span of 2 seasons there. So the Shedeur Sanders conversation obviously changes things a little bit as well. We'll be curious if Deion wants to see where he lands and, how those conversations are. I'm sure Deion's going to have some sort of say in what his location is, or at least talking to teams there. So there's a lot of moving parts in this beyond just a clear, I guess, head coaching interview. I don't see a world. I think it's probably less likely or unlikely that Deion is the Cowboys head coach next year. But if he wants it, Jerry will give it to him. And he is a guy that wants to make a splash. So will be exciting. I don't think this is the end of us hearing about it, but I don't think it is something that fully comes to fruition.
Yeah, it's pretty wrong of what Jerry Jones did to Mike McCarthy, just pulling this out and stretching this out to where we're at right now. It's like, all right, dude, I don't know what's going on there. But ultimately, Jerry Jones, he marches to his own beat, man. That's Jerry's world.
Always has.
He's been very successful. I off the field, maybe not on the field, but very successful off the field. And that's part of the show down there. It is a circus, and bringing Deion in would be a big prime time circus, but I think Deion could handle it. I don't know about his X's and O's. Like, there are times in Colorado, some of those spots you're like, what is he doing? And it's a different ballgame, college versus the NFL. I do think that he would be a leader of the men, though. I do think he would be a really good coach, to the point that he would be able to get a locker room together, believing in a message, and that's half the battle. So I am intrigued, but at the same time, I also don't want to lose him from Colorado. I like having him out there in Colorado as well.
Yeah, I do as well. And again, like I'm very, very curious where the priority list stacks up for Deion Sanders. The father situation with Shadur being drafted, I think, is probably at the forefront of his mind. That was sort of the vehicle that he's driven to get them to this point. Taking the coaching jobs and getting involved at the time that he did get involved. I don't know where Deion's head is fully at. I do think that if you give him the right coordinators, the right setup, that he could be a very successful NFL head coach. I think, again, I think he's a better coach, that straight up just head coach football qualities than he's been given credit. And you nailed it as far as the leader of men. People ride for Deion Sanders. His team absolutely does. And that does mean something to an extent. That doesn't win you football games, but that sets a culture for the organization that guys want to follow. We see the success of guys like Dan Campbell or even guys like Nick Sirianni, where the players have their back here. That does matter to an extent. So I do think Deion would follow that same pattern. We'll see how much further these conversations go. Again, I do think it's less likely than not that he ends up the head coach of the Cowboys or at the NFL level at this current point. But stranger things have happened, and Jerry's willing to make a splash, and Deion's willing to take a chance. So can't fully roll it out for sure.
8.5 is our number. Speaking of college football, the national championship, we are doing a live watch party at the Penn Club on Monday on the 20th. Come on out. Notre Dame and Ohio State. Sean Barnard, we're holding steady at 8.5 right now. Any thoughts for you on the national championship?
Yeah, and I'm excited. I'm gonna be able to pop out for this one, so I will be in attendance
Nice.
this time, making the Penn Club debut. So very excited taking this game here. I think 8's a lot for a national championship game, Sean Brace. I think this is one, and Ohio State looks excellent. It is theirs for the taking, the title for sure. But I think there's something to this Notre Dame team. I think Riley Leonard does an excellent job limiting risk, not putting his team in harm's way, and just making sure that he's not going to blow the game. Again, he falls in that same category of a guy that you can question the arm strength. You can question, can he make every throw on the field? But what I appreciate about Riley Leonard is he's willing to know his strengths and weaknesses and not trying to overcome things in a way that is harmful to the team. So he leans on his legs a lot. That Ohio State front is certainly going to have something to say about that. And I don't think that there's going to be a ton of success there, but it just feels like too many points for me. I think this game finds a way to come down to the wire. I think Ohio State still probably comes out on top, but I think Notre Dame puts up more of a fight than they're being given credit.
All right. Well, we'll talk plenty more about that game over the next few days right here on the Daily Ticket. Of course, that is next Monday night live at the Penn Club. Will be a rolling live watch party. We got, of course, presented by Colin Good, real estate agent for Compass Media. Compass Real Estate, excuse me. I don't have that written down in front of me. I had to pull that one from the brain. And also Yards Brewing Company will be involved as well. So looking forward to doing some big things over there at the Penn Club on Monday. Once again, presented by Colin Good, real estate agent from Compass Real Estate right here. Make sure you look him up online, compass.com. And Colin is my personal real estate agent as well. All right, let's keep it moving. Let's get on over to the NBA. What do you say, Sean? And talk to me about the 76ers here. Cousin Nicky checking in. He's feeling a shock the world moment tonight.
Wow.
Yeah. I don't know if I'm riding with him on that one. The 76ers are 11.5-point dogs tonight. 218.5 is our total in this one. My goodness. 11.5-point dogs. No Joel Embiid. Paul George going tonight, Sean?
He is. Paul George will be playing for as long as his foul issues will allow him to, as that has been a constant theme of late over the past 7 games that he's fouled out twice, had 5 fouls twice, and including one of those games being pretty severely limited in minutes because of the foul issues. So that's been something that's been particularly frustrating for me. I would love to see a shock the world night. I'm not sure if I see it with the pulse of this current Sixers team. If you ask my honest opinion, I would say lay the Thunder minus 11.5, and do think Isaiah Hartenstein absolutely makes his presence known tonight. There will be no Andre Drummond either, so it's likely that we're looking at Gershon Yabusele and Adem Bona holding down things at the center spot. In general, rebounding has been a weakness of this Thunder team, but based on the roster stipulations for the Sixers, I think they're going to have the advantage tonight. That I do think this game will likely be lost on the boards with Hartenstein front and center. We saw him make a strong impact when Joel Embiid was even playing during that Knicks series, and I think he's going to have even more success tonight without him. So this Thunder team is absolutely cruising. They look like real deal title threats. I do think they are deservingly the Western Conference favorites, and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander continues to take his game to new heights this year. So I don't feel good about the Sixers' outlook for tonight's game and really the entire season at this point, but you never know. Stranger things can happen in any given night.
76ers are currently 15-22, holding down the 11 spot in the East. And on the flip side of that, way up on the opposite end of the spectrum, the Oklahoma City Thunder 32-6, top of the West at this point in time, in front of Houston at 26-12, which is a surprise. Really cool to see that. But all in all, the Oklahoma City Thunder, who a lot of people had in the NBA Finals this year, are looking like that is going to be the case, man. They are dialed in, strong, really good squad, and we're going to see that first right up front this evening at the Wells Fargo Center. It's a shame that we don't have the big man going. What is the latest with the big man? I know he hurt his foot at the Christmas game, and then now he's still dealing with it. And what's the latest there?
Yeah, so I mean, as far as this specific situation, the Sixers have a back-to-back tonight, so it is Thunder tonight, Knicks tomorrow. I think in all reality, even if Joel Embiid were to play tonight, it's pretty unlikely they can beat this Thunder team, that they legitimately are playing at that high of a level right now. So I think the bet that was made by the Sixers here is we have a better chance if we rest him on the first half of this back-to-back, play him against the Knicks, and even though they will rightfully still be underdogs in this game, you have more of a puncher's chance than I think they do against this Thunder team. So I think that's how the organization viewed it. You're right about the foot injury. It apparently happened on Christmas. He then played 4 consecutive games after and then has been out for the past 5. So like is always the case with the Sixers organization, very guarded, very unclear as far as what the status is. Every time Nick Nurse has talked about it, he's spoken about it's a day-to-day thing, not something that they have any significant concerns with, but he's missed 5 games in a row. So the 2+2 is not equaling 4 in this situation, as has kind of been the case for the entire year. The reality is this team is not going to go anywhere until Joel Embiid can string some consecutive performances together. We've yet to see that more than 4 games at a time. That is 4 games at a time. That is the most consecutive games that he's played all season. I don't know what the deal is. It's tough. It keeps getting worse, it feels like. But yeah, bottom line is he will not be out there tonight.
We got a couple people checking in. Of course, our friends over at the 302 Birds, beat LA. Amen to that. I'm with you there. And always good to see my guy JJ. Keep doing what you're doing. Absolutely. Look, bottom line is the Sixers rolled the dice and decided to go about this season with some superstar presence. And of course, Paul George and Joel have not lived up to everything that the billing was there. And I know that, of course, JoJo is dealing with the injury, and that's the top of the list. Paul George has been a disappointment. I compared him to Aaron Rodgers the other day because I was like, he has his moments where you're like, yeah, I could see it. But then it's like, it's just non-existent night in, night out. And I'm just wondering what the future is for the Sixers and Paul George.
Yeah, it's going to get worse before it gets better, I feel, in the season. And, like, in defense of Paul George here, like, he was not brought here to be the guy. He was brought here to be a co-star to Joel Embiid. And to be honest, I think that's start and finish where this season has gone off the rails, of just the lack of availability from the MVP, from the foundation of your franchise. Things would look a whole lot different if he had just played half the games that has been the case to this point, or twice the games that has been the case to this point. It's just not happening there. And, like, for as far as the Paul George conversation, like, it's very interesting to watch how there's this bizarre kind of parallel with the Los Angeles Clippers. They obviously have Kawhi Leonard, who they're dealing with out there, who sort of has some similar injury concerns as Joel Embiid. And obviously they have James Harden run the show out there. Where James Harden and Paul George are very different is James Harden is one of the best floor raising players of all time. That basically whoever the other 4 players are on the floor are, he's going to give you a chance, that he's going to make that team competitive. That's not quite Paul George. Now, what I would argue here, and where I think the calculation is from the Sixers side of things, Paul George is a better ceiling raising player. That, like, we've seen the downside of James Harden in the playoffs. That has not been the story of Paul George's career. Yes, he's still had some lowlights there, but he's also been a guy that has gone to the conference finals, who has been the best player on some legitimate teams, going head-to-head with LeBron James. And really the gamble is here that you got to get to the playoffs, and then he's going to look better in that setting when this team is fully constructed. We've yet to see like consecutive or consistent sample size of what this team is to look like fully constructed. And I will also note Jared McCain officially ruled out for the year, which is a huge bummer there. I think we all kind of knew it was coming, and I do think it is the right call in the long view, as the kid is still just 20 years old and has a long career ahead of him that the Sixers are going to want to make the most of for sure. So definitely the right decision shutting him down. But that's a guy that I think is greatly missed on the Sixers roster, just as far as a vibe of positivity, a guy that brought some energy on the floor offensively, could create in a way that this team really lacks right now. So very disappointed we won't see McCain again. And yeah, it's keeps getting from bad to worse for this Sixers team.
Cavs 33-5 on top of the East, in front of the Boston Celtics 28-11. Then it goes Knicks 26-15, as Sean just pointed out. Another game coming up. It's a tough stretch for the Sixers, that's for darn sure.
Yeah, big time. Like, if we want to be honest about it, the games that they should have won, this kind of tear that they should have gone on, it was in the past couple games. Like losing to the Pelicans without Zion Williamson, without Brandon Ingram, and Zion, by the way, getting suspended before the game. Like, you can't ask for better opportunities. They had 7 wins in the entire season going into that, and the Sixers basically trailed that from start to finish. Like, it didn't ever feel like it's this continued casualness of the approach that they go about games, and it's really frustrating from standpoint. You're not going to win the game because you're the most talented team out there, and guess what? With all these injuries, a lot of times you're just not the most talented team out there. Also, as much as Tyrese Maxey has been the golden child of Philadelphia, it's been a frustrating stretch for him, man. And it is really disappointing that he has not kind of taken that next step. I think this is the first time in his career that we can call him having a little bit of regression or not continuing to take those steps in his elevated growth there. It's disappointing to see. It's obviously not all his fault, as there's plenty more issues with this franchise than just Tyrese here. But it is kind of telling to me that there is a completely different approach that he seems to have to this game. Or 2 games in general, there is a more frustrated, or I guess like expressive personality that he's displaying on the court here. I hate seeing every part of it, to be honest. And it's been one of the more surprising developments of this season.
All right. Once again, starts and ends with Joel Embiid. Unfortunately, 38th game for the 76ers, only played in 13 games all season long. And that's not good. That is not good. We'll see what happens tonight. 11.5-point dogs against the Oklahoma City Thunder. Quickly on this, though, what's going on in Sacramento? Man, they've turned it around out there since they brought on Doug Christie as the head coach.
Yeah, going on a little bit of a winning streak here. So I don't know how much truth there is. There's always all these things flying behind the scenes, but it did feel like, or seemingly, there some quotes flying around that would support the belief that there was a little bit of a rift between Mike Brown and De'Aaron Fox there. De'Aaron Fox is one of the more talented guards in the league, far more than he gets credit for. So I do think that is he's kind of having an opportunity to play with the freedom that he desires is the case there. We kind of see this a lot in sports, that it's a lot of times easier to replace a coach than it is to get a new star player. And I think that's the calculation that the Kings made, especially as De'Aaron Fox has yet to sign his extension and has had some of those kind of teaser quotes out there of we'll see what the future of the Kings are or what direction we're heading before I make a decision. But winning is the best cure for everything, and that's what they're doing right now. So I'm still skeptical of this Kings roster as a whole. I think like having Domantas Sabonis is a guy who, as great as he is offensively, really offers no resistance at the rim and struggles on the defensive side of the ball. They haven't really paired him with anybody to cover up for those mistakes. And even some of the guys they brought in, like DeMar DeRozan this offseason, another guy who's an excellent offensive engine, but there isn't kind of that level of defense that can match up with some of these other Western Conference threats in a half-court setting there. So I'm still skeptical of the Kings in the wider view, but it is nice to see them get back on track, and there's a lot of talent on that roster. So we'll be interesting to see if they do any more roster shakeup from here. Again, I'm not buying that much stock at this current point, but it is nice to see them get a couple in the win column.
All right. What else is a big story happening in the NBA, according to Sean Barnard right now? Picking it up because, look, I know everybody's paying attention slowly but surely, but we're going to have nothing but hoops in our face. And I've been watching a ton of college hoops. NBA took a little bit of a backseat these last 2 weeks. What's another big pressing storyline right now in the NBA, according to you?
Yeah, Phoenix seems like they're really hovering over the panic button. They're trying desperately to find a way to bring Jimmy Butler to the organization as kind of a, I guess, last chance to build that true trio that would have to involve a Bradley Beal trade, and he holds a no trade clause. It's very funny to me that there are 2 full no trade clauses across the entire NBA. Those belong to LeBron James and Bradley Beal. So pretty kind of hilarious how that worked out. But we're seeing the effects of guys who were willing to sign the check and not know who was ultimately signing them when those payments are coming forward. That's what Bradley Beal did by agreeing to that extension with the Wizards, getting the most. And the NBA has put in place these stipulations to reward guys for staying with teams. Beal is a clear effect of this, as he made the most of those, but now has carried that over to another organization where those cap numbers are a little more disruptive based on the stipulations that come with it. So Beal is a huge problem for the Suns team. He's been reduced to a complete off the bench role. Yusuf Nurkic also entirely eliminated from the rotation, hasn't even gotten off the bench in recent games. So they're definitely trying to make some sort of shakeup there. I still question, like, a team with Devin Booker and a team with Kevin Durant, if you can get them on the same page with just 3 other competent players, you got to have some sort of puncher's chance. But there's been some ugly basketball coming out of Phoenix right now, so kind of concerned with that.
All right. And then as far as the LA Lakers, they're floating at 20-17, right on the outside looking in as far as the playoffs or the 1 through 6 spot. They're currently in the play-in. What's the latest out there with the Lakers and JJ Redick?
Yeah, got blown out by the San Antonio Spurs last night, who I would also point out as another team that I've been really impressed by of late. That Victor Wembanyama leap is clearly here in front of us. He did not play out of his mind last night, but certainly did enough to get the victory in comfortable fashion against this Lakers team. I don't know, man. They're going to try and make some sort of shakeup. They just got to get a third guy. That Anthony Davis is still playing at a very high level. I think he had 30 and 14 as well as a pair of blocks last night and played pretty well overall. LeBron James, he has his nights where he turns back the clock, but he certainly is a little bit more in that game manager mode at this point in his career. But I still just don't think there's enough talent beyond that. There's good players on this team, the Austin Reeves, the Dalton Connects, the Rui Hachimoras. These are good guys, but are any of these guys capable of generating offense at the level that this Lakers team really commands them to be the case there? Because LeBron can't do it on an every night basis. Last night was one of those that I didn't think he quite had his fastball for. And you see, if that is not the case, they really don't win. So I don't know what's next for this Lakers team. I said to you coming into the season, I felt like JJ Redick was essentially being set up for failure, as this was a Band-Aid fix on a team that requires more than a Band-Aid fix. And we're kind of seeing that in full display. So I don't think the Lakers are ready to make any sort of noise in a postseason setting. I think they'll find a way into the dance and have some sort of matchup there. But I just think that there's not quite enough top-end talent on that roster overall.
All right. Great stuff across the board. One quick programming note coming up tonight. We got, speaking of college hoops, 6 o'clock pregame coverage for Villanova and Xavier. Big game for the Cats. Have turned it around. Tough loss last time out against St. John's on Saturday. Big spot for them. They are underdogs at Xavier tonight, 2.5-point dogs. 146 is our total. Catch the action right here on the Gambler. Game coming up, as I said, pregame coverage kicking off at 6 p.m. We will have a giveaway also for tomorrow for the Villanova basketball for everybody, because we did give away a couple tickets to the UConn game and got a big reaction about that. So they're playing at the Wells Fargo Center on Friday, taking on Providence, another Big East matchup, big-time games. All of them are big right now at this point in time of the season for Villanova with the tough start that they had there. Currently 11-6 on the season. We'll see what takes place tonight, but starting tomorrow, we will have a giveaway on our socials at Fox PHL Gambler for Friday night's game, Villanova and Xavier, or excuse me, Villanova and Providence on Friday, Xavier tonight. One thing at a time. Sean,
And
great
also,
stuff. Oh, go ahead.
Jump in real quick. Villanova absolutely turning things around, playing some really good basketball. Shout out Eric Dixon, man, who is playing at a legitimate National Player of the Year level right now. I was pretty skeptical of his chances of having an NBA opportunity following last season, really throughout his Villanova career. My mind has changed this year, that I do think the signs are pointing to him getting some sort of NBA chance at the conclusion of the season and when the draft season approaches. So that only happens with him taking the strides forward that he's progressed. His perimeter shooting has been unbelievable this season, and that certainly has changed the ceiling or the role that he will be looked at to fill on an NBA level. So stay tuned for that as the season progresses and as we kind of transition into the NBA draft season. But I do think Eric Dixon is going to be a guy who receives at least an NBA chance at the conclusion of this year.
I like that. Yeah, we were talking about that the other day, where he's going to get selected. He's working on a 3-point shot. He's making them this year. He's added that to his repertoire. Big body, really controlled, good skills as far as with the basketball. I'm a fan of Eric Dixon, and he is definitely the best player on that floor more times than not when they take the floor, no matter the opponent. And he's kicking butt and taking names this year, as you pointed out. Hopefully more of that.
Leading the conference in 3-point percentage at 47% on 7.2 3-point attempts per game. So for a guy that had never shot more than 4.7 in any other season, really impressive stuff there. So shout out to Eric Dixon, man.
Yeah, Villanova. Come on, man. Let's see if they can get a victory tonight. Catch it right here on The Gambler. Sean, great stuff as always. We'll continue to read you over at dknetwork.com, following you at Sean_Barnard1. Always great to get you on the daily ticket trip around all of the leagues. And of course, Eagles and the Rams coming our way on Sunday. DraftKings Sportsbook, where we're getting our numbers from. 6-point spread. Birds favored at this point in time. We'll see what happens with that number throughout the course of the week. For Sean Barnard, I'm Sean Brace. If you missed anything, you can catch all of our podcasts and everything at foxphlgambler.com.